He stood there in his tailored suit, smiling like the winner of a game I never agreed to play. The judge's voice faded into static as the gavel fell. The house, the cars, the accounts all his. When it was over, my lawyer leaned close and whispered, "He left you with nothing." I looked at the papers, then at the man I once called my husband. He looked right back, satisfied, as if stripping me bare meant he'd finally proven something. So I smiled. "Not nothing," I said softly. "He forgot to take my piece." That night, I drove until the city lights disappeared behind me. No music, no tears, just the hum of the highway and the kind of silence that feels like a heartbeat learning to rest again. The road led me to the ocean and to the version of myself he never got to destroy. He took everything in the divorce, except the one thing he'll never understand: stillness. If you've ever walked away from someone who tried to break you, hit like and subscribe. I love knowing where you're listening from, so drop your city in the comments. Now, let me take you back to where this all began. Before peace, there was noise, the kind that hides behind love. When I first met Adam, I thought confidence looked like leadership. I thought control meant care. He had that kind of charm that drew people in, and the kind of certainty that made you doubt yourself if you didn't agree. We met at a gallery opening in the city. He said my work, a minimalist interior design piece, looked like quiet, pretending to be brave. I laughed then. I didn't realize how right he'd be. For the first few years, everything shimmered. Dinners in places with linen napkins and soft jazz. Weekend getaways. Roses, just because. I told my friends I'd found a man who made me feel safe. They smiled, but one of them asked quietly, "Or do you just feel managed?" I didn't answer, because even then, part of me knew. It started small. He'd say, "I'll handle the bills, you focus on what you love." Or, "Why work so hard when I can take care of everything?" It sounded like generosity. It was actually disarmament. Slowly, my name faded from our finances, then from our decisions, then from my own reflection. By the time we were married, he had turned our life into a carefully curated exhibit, polished, controlled, and always his. If I disagreed, he'd smile and say, "Relax, I'm just protecting our future." But protection became permission. Permission became possession. The house we bought sat on a hill overlooking the city. I had imagined it as a place of light, open windows, green plants, soft music. But he filled it with dark marble and sharp edges. "Strong lines," he said. "It needs to feel powerful." It didn't. It felt like a museum of everything I'd lost, including myself. When I suggested opening my own design studio, he laughed. "Sweetheart, you're talented, but you're not built for business." That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, realizing I'd married a man who loved my reflection more than my voice. The first time I caught him lying, it was about something small, a dinner he said was just work. But his cologne lingered on his shirt longer than honesty should. When I asked, he smiled. "You're overthinking again. Don't ruin a good thing with suspicion." And I believed him because believing him was easier than believing I'd built my life on sand. Months later, the lies weren't small anymore. The woman had a name, a face, a car parked in front of his office. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just sighed, bored, and said, "You've changed. You don't inspire me anymore." There it was, the sentence that ended a decade. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I just stood there, watching him pour himself another drink, as if I were an employee who'd outlived her usefulness. By morning, he'd already called his lawyer. Efficient, predictable, unemotional. He wanted the house, the business, the cars. He even asked to keep the vacation timeshare I'd bought before we married. "Less paperwork that way," he said. I agreed to everything, not because I was weak, but because I was done. Let him have the walls. I was keeping the air. The day the divorce papers arrived, I didn't cry. I took one long shower, put on my simplest dress, and walked to the kitchen. There was one last box left to close, labeled Studio Sketches. Inside were the original designs I'd made for our first home. My handwriting, my creativity, my essence erased from every corner of that life, but still here, pressed between paper and dust. I realized something then. I could rebuild from this, not revenge, renewal. So I packed a suitcase, left my keys on the counter, and drove until the ocean swallowed the skyline. At first, the silence was unbearable. No phone buzzing, no footsteps echoing across marble floors, no voice telling me what I was worth, just wind, waves, my own breath. For the first time in years, I didn't have to be perfect, I just had to be. The nights were hardest. I'd wake up reaching for noise, a text, an argument, a distraction. There was none, just stillness. But slowly, that stillness became a friend. I began sketching again soft, imperfect lines, rooms that felt like calm, spaces designed for peace, not power. And somewhere between the sound of the tide and the scratch of pencil on paper, I started to hear myself again. "He took everything," I whispered one night, "but I think he forgot to take the only thing that ever mattered." My peace? Peace didn't come easily. It came like a slow tide, hesitant, uneven, then unstoppable. For months, I lived in a small cabin near the cliffs of Ocean View, the same retreat whose sign had caught my headlights that night. Mornings began with silence and the sound of gulls sweeping across the gray horizon. There was no luxury here, just wooden floors, chipped mugs, and a small desk facing the sea. I'd traded marble for salt air, and it felt like breathing for the first time. At first, I tried to keep busy designing, journaling, sketching ideas for a studio I couldn't yet afford. But the retreat's director, a gentle woman named Elise, told me, "Sometimes doing nothing is where healing hides." So I learned to sit still, a discipline more difficult than any fight I'd ever had with Adam. The first few weeks were chaos in disguise. Every quiet minute made space for memories, his voice correcting me in front of guests, the constant tension of walking on eggshells, the sound of his laughter when I finally stopped arguing back. But eventually, the noise faded, and in its place came a strange, foreign thing clarity. One morning, after meditation, Elise asked me to design a new reading room for the retreat. "Something that feels like exhale," she said. I laughed softly. "That's all I've been trying to do lately." It took me a week to finish the design. Pale wood, linen curtains, a round skylight spilling soft daylight over cushions on the floor. No sharp edges, no clutter, just light and air. When it was done, people began to sit there for hours, journaling, painting, breathing. Elise called it the still room. Word spread faster than I expected. Visitors started asking for design consultations, wanting me to create peaceful spaces in their own homes. I didn't have a company. I didn't even have business cards. But every time someone said, "You made my home feel like healing," a part of me stitched back together. One day, an editor from a wellness magazine came to the retreat. She interviewed Elise for a feature and noticed the reading room. "Who designed this?" she asked. When Elise pointed to me, the woman smiled. "We'd love to write about your work." 2 months later, my story appeared in Haven Living, under the headline, "From Divorce to Design, the Woman Who Turned Heartbreak into Stillness." I almost didn't recognize myself in the photos. The woman smiling beside a wall of pale light didn't look like the wife who used to flinch when her phone rang. The article went viral. Within weeks, I had a list of clients, women, mostly, who'd lost themselves in marriages that looked perfect from the outside. They didn't want mansions. They wanted quiet, spaces to start over. I named my business Still House Designs. At first, I ran it from my cabin. Then from a small studio Elise helped me rent in town. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my walls, my breath, my name on the door. And then one afternoon, while finalizing plans for a client's retreat center, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe intuition, maybe closure, made me press accept. "Claire," the voice said. I hadn't heard it in nearly 2 years, but I knew it instantly. "Adam?" He started with small talk, as if we were old friends. "I saw your article. You've done well." "I found peace," I said quietly. "That's more than well." He laughed, but it sounded brittle. "You always were dramatic." Then his tone shifted. "Listen, things have been rough. The market turned. I lost a few investors." Of course. He hadn't called to congratulate me. He'd called because he needed something. I didn't say anything, so he filled the silence. "Maybe you could help. You know people now. Maybe we could—" "No," I interrupted softly. We couldn't. There was a long pause. Then, almost bitterly, he said, You sound different. I am. What happened to you? I stopped living in your version of peace and found my own. I ended the call. Then I set the phone down and stepped outside. The ocean wind hit my face, cold but clean. That night, I wrote in my journal, The opposite of control isn't chaos, it's freedom. In the months that followed, I expanded Still House across the coast. We built meditation homes, retreat spaces, and healing centers, all inspired by silence. For the first time in my life, success didn't feel like proof. It felt like alignment. I no longer wanted revenge. Peace had already done its quiet work. And somewhere out there, Adam was beginning to feel the weight of everything he'd taken and everything he couldn't. The news about Adam came quietly, the way storms often do before they break. It started with a headline I didn't intend to see. Langford Enterprises faces financial collapse amid fraud allegations. His company, the empire he once worshipped more than our marriage. I stared at the photo attached. Adam walking briskly out of a courthouse, sunglasses on, expression unreadable. The comments below were brutal. The golden boy finally tarnished. I didn't feel joy. Not even vindication. Just an eerie stillness. The same kind of silence that used to scare me now felt like justice breathing softly at my shoulder. Over the next few months, I'd hear bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. His properties had been seized. Investors backed out. The woman he'd left me for a publicist apparently had disappeared as soon as the headlines turned ugly. He was left with nothing but debts and the echo of his own arrogance. And then one afternoon, he appeared. It was late autumn. I was at my studio, sketching a design for a small women's center up north. The front bell chimed, and when I looked up, there he was, thinner, grayer, but still trying to hold the posture of a man in control. Claire, he said softly, you look good. I stood, calm, collected. You look tired. He gave a hollow laugh. Yeah, well, life happens. He looked around the studio, the clean white walls, the scent of sage and cedar, the framed magazine covers with my name. His eyes lingered on the one that read, Peace is the new power. I heard you're doing well, he said finally. I wanted to see for myself. Now you have. He hesitated, searching for words. I made mistakes, he said. Big ones. And I know it's not your problem, but I could use some help. Investors won't take my calls. My reputation's... He trailed off. You still have connections. Maybe you could... I held up a hand. Adam, stop. He froze, like he wasn't used to being interrupted. I don't owe you rescue, I said quietly. You took everything, remember? The house, the company, even my savings. His eyes darted away. I was angry. I thought, you thought you could win by taking things, I said. But peace doesn't work that way. It can't be owned, only earned. He opened his mouth to speak again, but no words came. I could see the realization flicker in his eyes, the slow, painful understanding that I was no longer someone he could unbalance. I just need a second chance, he whispered finally. You already had one, I replied. The day I walked away. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the heater. Then he nodded slowly, eyes glassy but dry. You've changed, he said. Yes, I said. That's what healing looks like. He turned toward the door, his reflection ghosting against the glass before fading into the afternoon light. After he left, I stood for a while in the empty studio, watching dust drift through sunlight. I expected to feel triumph, but what I felt instead was peace, quiet, deep, absolute. Later that night, I went back to the retreat where it all began. Elise greeted me with her soft smile. You look lighter, she said. I saw a ghost today, I replied. But he can't haunt me anymore. We walked along the shoreline, the waves rolling in slow and deliberate. The air smelled like salt and closure. Do you ever wonder, Elise asked, why people like him fall apart when others rise? I smiled faintly. Because peace is heavier than ego, and when you've built your life on control, you can't carry it. The next morning, a small box arrived at my studio. No return address. Inside was my old wedding band, the one I'd left behind years ago, and a short note written in familiar handwriting. You were right. You always had more than me. I placed the ring on the windowsill and let the sunlight catch it. Then, I closed the blinds. He had taken everything he could touch, but the one thing he'd never understand was the power of stillness, and that's what destroyed him. The kind of revenge I found didn't need noise, or witnesses, or pain. It was simple. I lived well. I slept peacefully. And every breath I took in freedom was a story he'd never stop replaying in his head. The sea was calm the morning I finally understood what peace really meant. Not absence of pain, but presence of self. I sat on the same cliff where I'd first arrived years ago, the wind cold but kind against my skin. Below me, the water moved in slow rhythm, steady, certain. Somewhere behind me, the studio was opening for the day, laughter spilling faintly from the interns I'd hired. My life no longer echoed with fear, it breathed. I opened my journal and wrote 3 words. It's over now. Not in bitterness, not in triumph, just truth. People like Adam think power comes from control, from ownership, from winning, but peace has its own quiet gravity. It doesn't shout. It pulls you toward what's real and lets everything false fall away. I had built a life on that silence, a home no one could take, a calm that no one could shake. And somewhere, I knew, he'd feel it too, the weight of knowing that the one thing he couldn't destroy was the only thing that mattered. The wind picked up. I took the ring he'd sent, small, dull, meaningless now, and placed it on a flat stone. The tide crept closer, touched it, then carried it away. He took everything in the divorce, I whispered, watching the water reclaim the metal. Except my peace. The sun rose higher, painting the horizon gold. I closed my eyes, breathed in salt and sunlight, and smiled. And that, I said softly, was what destroyed him. Because some endings aren't about revenge. They're about balance the moment the storm realizes it can't touch the ocean. And in that stillness, I finally became everything he said I couldn't be: whole, steady, free,